The year is 1996. Titans clash among the city's skyline, destroying buildings left and right, straight at a rampage. They send in the military, but it's a pincer. To the left, a questionable Italian plumber, and to the right, the blue blur. As the city takes more damage, the government plays its last card. Release Crash Bandicoot. And Crash he does, onto the scene and into living rooms across America for the rest of the ending century. A marsupial, a bandicoot specifically, Crash was Sony and Naughty Dog's answer to the great video game mascot, competing in the hearts of children with both Sonic and Mario. Though he would later fall from grace and not be invited to compete in the Olympics. While Crash games would continue to be made after 2000, for another decade in fact, his fall-off would be notable. While Mario retained a constant image of printing money and Sonic continued to ensnare the minds of the hyperfixated, Crash was left to languish, likely in a box on the street. That is, until 2017, when the original 3 Crash Bandicoot games were remade, re-released, and re-enjoyed. Today we'll be looking at the original Crash Bandicoot game, remastered and on the Xbox. While I have fond memories of playing Crash Bandicoot 3, I don't think I've ever played the original, so I'm excited for the content. Off the bat, we're greeted with Crash in his original design and watch as he's transformed into his remastered self. While I still like the original look better, it's funny and it brings the humor Crash is known for. On the main menu, the option to play the first 3 games presents as leading paths, and the style is here. I cycle through the options as the announcer dramatically says each game title.
It's Crash Bandicoot!
During this, I accidentally hit the trigger on the controller, which takes me out of the game and into the shop page for the remake of Crash Team Racing, which kills the hype. This combined with having to agree to a license isn't a great feeling. Crash has been so crystallized in the past for me that having these 2 features of modern gaming so instantly juxtaposed with the 90s classic feels disillusioning. We press start and open with the synthesis of Crash Bandicoot. It's a crazy Dr. Frankenstein-style experimentation. While I don't remember exactly what the voice of Dr. Cortex used to sound like, it feels a little off here. I don't think it's overly notable, and the spirit feels the same.
This time, I shall reign triumphant.
It's 100 degrees on the East Coast, so I have the AC blasting, but from what I can hear of the music, I like it.
Closer than ever before.
We see cages of other animal types waiting to be worked on. It isn't long before the experiment goes awry. Crash escapes out a window, fleeing the doctors.
Capture him!
He says here, and it scares me because I don't remember him talking besides saying whoa. We then see a female Bandicoot, though she looks different than how I remember Crash's sister Coco looking. This is Tawna, Crash's girlfriend. The creeps close in on her, and Crash awakens on a beach, tide lapping at his face. We're set on our linear path forward, Crash confined to going straight. There are boxes standing before us, and I break them open, finding Wumpa fruit and an extra life. 2 are bounce crates, always fun. The sound design feels exactly like I remember it, with the fruit accumulating into the counter being ever satisfying. Crash's face on the extra life token will never not be funny to me. A bit on, we find our first Aku Aku box, gaining the floating mask as a companion as a result. This will negate any damage that we take, but consumes the mask. The sound the box makes upon breaking scratches my brain real nice. I move through the level, jumping on crabs, over pits, getting a feel. Crash is a lot heavier than I expected. He doesn't jump as high, move as fast, and just isn't as precise. This worries me from a performance perspective. I've done Sonic Souls, I'd like to avoid Crashen Ring. I hit my first checkpoint easily enough. I get my 3rd Aku Aku, which grants me temporary invincibility. Emboldened, I run through a turtle, then instantly fall into a pit. Crashen Ring, it is. I move to the end of the level and there's a fork, so I go left. I see a floating holographic box, and I remember that I'm supposed to try and get every crate. It isn't required to win, but it's akin to 100%ing the level. I double back to go on the right path, and there's a wide pit. To cross, you need to hit an activator box, which makes the bridge out of regular boxes. You jump up on them one by one over the pit. I couldn't do this to save my life. I died so many times I actually got game over and had to do the beginning again. Eventually I gave up, went across the pit at the end, and died there too. I was clearly taking Crashen Ring too lightly. To add insult, the game slams every box I missed over my head, like an abusive parent dissatisfied with my homework. We zoom out to the view of the Wumpa Islands, which acts as a level select screen. I'm informed something called Stormy Ascent is now available, though the notification and different colored map plot are leading me to believe this is DLC. I retry the level on a time trial for the experience and die within 3 seconds. My first complete run clocks in at 38 seconds, missing the 34-second mark set by the game. I do even worse my second run and decide to let it go. I move on from Insanity Beach to the next level, Jungle Rollers. Going with a level 2 Aku Aku, not really sure what to expect, I hit another Aku Aku box immediately. This grants me invincibility and I sprint the level wild and feral to take advantage. Near the end of the sprint, I hit another Aku Aku box, extending it. During this mad race, I collect these small tokens of the female Bandicoot from before, earning a bonus round. She's waiting at the end of it in a small zone, but is snatched away by Dr. Cortex before I can reach her. Immunity ended, I finish up. I do die, first falling into a pit I didn't see, and then dying again to a man-eating plant. The plant death nets me an achievement, so it's a fair trade. This level was much easier, but anything would be when you're invincible. I played through the Great Gate, the shield-carrying enemies being annoying. Crash isn't great at jumping, and his weight makes it difficult to do it in succession. I hit every box I can and clear the bonus, but somehow still miss boxes. This confused me to the point I went right back and tried to play the level all over again. I didn't find them. There's a platform outline at the very end, similar to the bonus level platform, but I have no idea how to activate it. I get so annoyed I actually looked this up, something I usually avoid doing. It turns out I need a gem from the end of the game to go back and activate it, so I can't get all the boxes here yet. Miffed, I leave the level. In Boulder, the camera flips and I know exactly what I'm expecting. I'm still pretty fresh off the Shelob fight from The Lord of the Rings, so I'm prepared. I flee the boulder, hitting the boxes in the brief tunnel sections as I go. I even get all the boxes during the run portion, unsure if the boulder crushing them would count. Netting my first gem, Crash burps it up in triumph, and then talks again, which weirds me out. I decide to try the time trial on this level since the normal run was pretty easy. I get the Sapphire Relic on my first go. Emboldened, I go back in and I net the Gold Relic. The Platinum Relic comes a few runs after. It feels good to complete a level fully, both gem and relics in hand. I figure attempting to do this on a later level would drive me mad, so being able to say I was able to do it on at least one level is enough for me. I hit through upstream, which is even more linear than usual, the way forward tight due to Crash's inability to swim. I guess they don't have water in Australia? I die a few times, but it doesn't feel too bad. I move on to the boss fight against Papu Papu. This feels weird because from his perspective, surely I'm just like a home invader, right? He's asleep, I break in, he stands his ground. Nothing I've seen so far indicates that I'm the good guy here. I play the fight a few times because I'm not sure what to do. Eventually I figure out the obvious, that I have to jump on him. Beating him, I humiliate him further and use him as a launch pad. A new map point appears, Coco's time machine. This shows Coco as I remember her. I let her join me, gaining the ability to swap between the siblings. I'm sure this wasn't in the original game, but it's a neat feature for the remake. Coco's inaugural run doesn't go great. Rolling Stone shows off how imprecise movement can be, but we get through it after a game over. The next level, Wild Hog, is one of my favorite kinds. I was a big fan of the tiger levels in Warped. The floaty controls are a little nightmarish here, and you need good timing to get the boxes as you ride by, and it can be hard due to the inputs. Sometimes I also seem to clip through things. One example is when I jumped while the pig spit roast was overhead. The run should have ended, but it didn't. The final shield enemy hits me, flinging me off my hog, but it flings me right into the gem and the exit, which clears the run in an ill-deserved win. I can't express the shock across my face as I realized what was happening. Up next is Native Fortress, which is fine in the first half, but has a very nasty ending stretch where you're jumping between spiked poles and flames. I burned through my life stash, and I was worried about another game over. This deep into a level like this, a game over is a big discouragement from continuing. I guess I did so poorly the game placed a new checkpoint halfway through the run for me. From a pride point, this is rough, but from a gameplay perspective, this dynamic checkpoint is extremely player friendly, and I really liked it. This game doesn't have a difficulty selection, and Crash is presented as for gamers of all skill level, so it makes sense to build features like this in. It feels like an act of care, thinking about the experience of the consumer beyond initial purchase. If this feature wasn't here, I doubt anyone would think to complain about its absence, so it's a nice plus. Next, on a new island in the chain, we hit Up a Creek, but it's a rehash of Upstream. There's a metal exclamation block I tried to go for, but I don't want to risk a game over, so I keep it pushing. Moving on to Ripperoo, we jump around setting boxes of TNT off to damage our insane foe. Again, the boss fight has no setup, so I'm not sure exactly why we're fighting him. I game over multiple times. The water is the devil. The game gives you a free Aku Aku to help you if you die multiple times, but it doesn't work on terrain hazards like water or falling, so there's no crutch for me here. Again, the biggest issue is the controls, though my constant clipping through the TNT into the water doesn't help either. Eventually, I send Ripperoo downstream. After is the Lost City and its Crashen ring. From swarms of bats to moving pillars, nothing here is friendly. The worst offender is the hopping lizard, who enjoys pushing you back, usually over a ledge. They're in places that make it impossible to skip past them for the most part, and some placement is downright cruel. I played this level so many times I eventually switched to Coco to keep it fresh. I get a bonus level. The character token is the bald scientist who works with Dr. Cortex, Dr. Embryo, but the bonus level is so hard I don't even bother. I get the normal bonus level which nets me 3 lives, but I burn through them almost instantly on the rotating platform and lizard combination. It feels weird how unforgiving the level is, especially after how I spoke about how great the extra checkpoint was in the other level. I didn't get an extra checkpoint here and it really would have helped. From what I think of as a kid's game, this is brutal. I finally eke out the dub, weary over how hard future levels might be. The menu lists 26% completion, so we've got a long way to go. Temple Ruins was better, but still difficult. I found myself falling off the side a lot or walking into spears when I didn't think I was close enough to touch them. It had me second guessing myself. Is it the controls and design, or am I just terrible at platformers? I don't have an ego around being good at platformers, so the thought doesn't offend me, but in this gray area between the two options, I find uncertainty. Road to Nowhere cemented in my mind that both options can be true. Not only is this game throwing unfunny platforming situations at me, I'm terrible at meeting them. Crossing this rope bridge was a nightmare. The first bridge alone killed me more times than I'd like to admit. After dying a lot, I scored invincibility using my pity Aku Akus. Normally this wouldn't help here much, but during one of these invincibility dashes, I got launched up on top of the rope. I'm assuming this is unintended, but it opened my eyes and a way forward was born. This isn't to say using the rope method is easy. I still die a lot trying to get on it, or jumping over sections where there is no rope. I felt bad about using this method at first, until I saw just how long the level was. Playing the intended way would take me forever, if I even bothered to finish it. After a brutal bunch of game overs, I cleared the level. I don't like the lives mechanic in platformers, especially in Crash where you earn them and they stack up. The issue is very obvious. If you're good at the game, they sit there. If you're bad, you never have any. When you game over, it resets to 4, and if you're bad at the game, you're not going to get enough Wumpa Fruit to get an extra life. Static lives placed in the level are one and done, and they don't respawn after acquiring unless you reload the entire level from like the menu. That isn't to say I think the game needs to be easier, though I'm convinced the controls or the flightiness of movement is partially to blame. That's not me coping for my lack of skill, I'm happy to admit I have none, just an honest thought. Even in sections I'm better at, the flipped camera chase, the riding sections, I feel it. Crash is heavy but flighty. What an achievement. Put him in Smash. Boulder Dash brings us back into a welcome form, and it feels good to be good at something again. That is, until my thumb slips off the joystick at the end, killing me. It's not a big deal, but in the back of my head, I really wanted a first try deathless run. It would have been a confidence booster. I end the level with no fanfare. Sunset Vista transforms me into a post-ego being. Using the same DNA as Lost City, Crashen Ring truly rears its head as I feebly limp through this land, torn asunder. Every checkpoint is excruciatingly far. There is no relief. Everything is timed, and the moment you lose an ounce of attention is the moment you fall over dead. It's oppressive. And when you constantly game over, those lives don't get you very far. It got to the point where if I lost a life in the first section, I would intentionally game over. The resource was far too precious to waste so close to the starting. Often I would gain a life through Wumpa Fruit just to lose it immediately after. In the end, I hit a phase I can only truly describe as locked in, counting beats under my breath the time jumps, breaking every box for fruit, channeling a terrible aura to the developers. I had entered a wrathful zen. I knew I could beat this level with 4 lives. I knew I could, and I did. I made my final jump over to the exit. With a victorious rage, I jumped on the bouncy boxes, gathering fruit and lives. This victory was mine, and no one was gonna tell me nothing. Koala Kong was next. He is a strange furry with an affinity for flexing his glutes despite skipping leg day. I lost a few lives trying to figure out what I was supposed to be doing, as is custom for this game, but it didn't hurt me. Nothing could hurt me the way Sunset Vista had. The boss fight amounted to me standing in the right corner, spinning away small and large rocks alike. Again, no reason is given for this fight, but maybe Crash just wants the smoke. Who's to say? I emerged victorious and moved onwards to the next island. Our first stop on this industrial hell mound is heavy machinery. It was a new day, though still 100 degrees out, so I went in refreshed but a bit sweaty. This level brings the factorial feeling as we jump over pipes and past streams of toxic byproduct. The enemies are robots, but pose no threat. I complete most of the run flawlessly, so when I die, I don't feel too bad about it. I die again instantly right after. I find the first time dying breaks my zen, and I get more careless. I take a breath and continue on, completing the level just fine. I even get all the embryo tokens on top of the Twana ones, netting me 2 bonus levels. These bonus levels can be a godsend, not as much for their content, but because they turn into checkpoints. Getting all the Tana tokens can make or break a run on some levels. I spend a good chunk of time on the Tana bonus level here, wanting to beat it for no reason other than my own satisfaction. After a dozen tries, I get all the boxes, only to fall an inch short of the end platform. A few more later, I nail it for real. I give the embryo one a few attempts a little down the line. It isn't long before I decide to move on. It's past the skill level I'm willing to put in here. Heading into Cortex Power, I jump through the conductors. Dying here shows off my underwear, earning me an achievement. I continue on and decide to go left at the branching path. Down the hall is what I at first thought was a wizard firing magic at me from his wand. As the shock wore off, I realized he had a gun and was just shooting me. The moment felt comical, surprising, almost special. I didn't think there was anything left in the game that would catch me off guard the way that did. After dying, I'm back at the start, opting to go right. This fares better, offering a checkpoint. I continue avoiding conductors and heated pipes, making my way to the end. Generator room knocks me out a few times. I actually think platforming here is pretty fun. The lives mechanic keep this level from being truly enjoyable though. I can't really ever relax and experiment because if I lose too much, I have to start all over. There's this one bogus section where I see a checkpoint, but the game won't let me jump over to it, even though Crash would clearly make it. It's a later part of the level, and it feels insulting to be prevented from making that clearly possible jump due to an invisible wall. I like the screens with Cortex in the beginning though. Like, what could he possibly be saying on them? Or is it just like a GIF in universe?
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth. If you still even remember that name. But I'm afraid you've been misinformed.
Running through toxic waste, I'm reminded of Subway Surfers. The rat mobster returns in a new variant, barrel chucking. The gameplay feels rhythmic with the jumping, and it's engaging but not overbearing. I get all the boxes, make my way out, but I don't get a gem, having died once. Aside from the usual clear gems earned from smashing boxes, the game also has 6 special colored gems earned from going the extra mile on specific levels. These colored gems unlock new pathways, and we've seen them dotted throughout the levels, the clear outlines of unknowable exploration taunting me. This level was fun and short enough that I decided to go for the gold, or, well, go for the blue gem. It takes about 4 attempts before I snag it. While I have zero plans to 100% this game, knowing I was able to get both a clear and colored gem on top of a relic of every kind is nice. It's like a little sampler, one here, one there.
Redditors, what's the absolute worst, most petty thing an ex has ever done to you?
My ex, Sarah, had a temper. One night, we argued over takeout, Chinese versus pizza. When I dismissed her, she grabbed my brand new PlayStation 5 and, with a terrifyingly calm expression, chucked it out the second-story window. My expensive console shattered on the concrete below. The argument stopped cold, she cried. I was in shock. We broke up a week later. I never got another PS5 while we were together. And I still get twitchy seeing one. Pure, petty video game destruction.
I meet with Pinstripe Potaru, the mob boss no doubt leading our rat friends. He's got a swanky office, though it's trashed because of gunplay. He shoots at you, and I never know if Crash is sufficiently out of the way or not, leading to a lot of dead runs where I would have sworn I was out of range. Eventually I knock his block off, becoming a level 100 Mafia boss. I clear the high road in the same way I cleared Road to Nowhere, running along the ropes. It was actually pretty funny, as end in sight I jumped off the rope to avoid falling, only to fall through the bridge right next to the exit. While running the rope is tedious, it's a lot easier than the expected platforming. I was much more experienced this time, so it didn't take nearly as long as Road to Nowhere. Slippery Climb made me seethe like no tomorrow. The issue is it feels artificially difficult. Everything must be properly timed. The opening gave me a lot of trouble, and it never got better. I constantly hit game over, but I'd burn through the lives at restart, usually having 1 or none by my first checkpoint. It created this vicious cycle where, because I barely progressed, I never had the opportunity to learn the newer sections. So I was front-loaded. Anytime I hit anything new, it was nerve-wracking. It was clear you weren't supposed to survive messing up. While the bird you jump on would eventually respawn, some of the lifts would fall out of sync, making it impossible to get back on the shifting stairs. It was almost impossible to get off the spikes, making Aku Aku useless. The placement of the checkpoints felt at odds with the level design. They were never where I assumed they would be. The levels have a good flow to them, with different subsections often focusing on different types of mechanic. This is a good placing point for checkpoints, especially in a platformer, so the player can adjust. I could go on about the extra life placement. Tucked in alcoves, a player of less than desirable skill would never be able to successfully get. Obviously, the level design is intended to be hostile. I have no beef with that, but I think something's gotta give. After beating Sunset Vista, I felt victorious, even if begrudgingly. After beating this, I feel disdain. It was less about overcoming the odds and more about surviving slamming my head into the wall. Lights out is what the title suggests, running in the dark. Aku Aku illuminates the path, but only for a brief period, so timing your Aku Aku gets is the name of the game. The platforming isn't crazy, but there's a lot of running, and it makes me feel like I'm zooming through the level. I die a lot, mostly due to losing the light. Lights out is pretty much a death sentence. The rats acting as your moving hazard aren't terrible, but I frequently would hit them into the Aku Aku boxes, messing up my timing. The ending 3 or so jumps was the worst part, my light always running out. I saw the exit maybe 5 times before I was actually able to reach it. This was a good palette cleanse, and I really liked the level aesthetics. It's like a spooky crypt turned cave, and I thought it fit the level very well. An interesting note is that while the game feeds you Aku Aku masks, they don't double up, but you won't hit level 2 Aku Aku or the 3rd level that grants invincibility. They probably playtested and found the level was too easy if you were invincible for all of it. Jaws of Darkness took a bit, but only because of the perspective issues. There were rising and falling pillars that I just could not grasp the perspective of. This isn't their first appearance, and it's not the first time I've been unable to tell where something is in the space, but on this run it was just brutal. Walls that close in from the side abound, and there's one part I couldn't figure out the timing regardless of how long I watched, so I would just save an Aku Aku for it. I was able to take the gem path due to having the blue gem, so that was a nice novelty. However, unlike the bonus levels, it doesn't act as a checkpoint, and you have to do the section all over again if you die, so I decided to forego it after my initial embark. I almost finished the run, but I died jumping onto the ending platform. It took a few more runs to finish, and I was not thrilled.
Goodbye.
Castle Machinery was a much easier time for me than the previous levels had been, even easier than Lights Out, though not as easy as Toxic Waste. I still game over, don't get me wrong, but only while I'm getting my grip on the beginning. Once I actually get into the level, it's smooth sailing. As seems to be tradition, I die with the exit in view, but I remedy this right after, clearing the level. The embryo fight was a return to brutal. His opening phase wasn't terrible. Jump on slime, dodge flask, repeat. I often clipped through the slimes, which felt really cheap since it meant they would damage me instead of me damaging them, and if they grouped up on me during the clipping, it was over. But the worst part was the second phase. Embryo becomes a trend twin, fine, and you're supposed to jump on a fallen brick and then on his face. I, for the life of me, could not figure out how to damage this guy. It didn't seem to matter what I did. I wasn't connecting with the hitbox for his face. It didn't help that I only got like 20 seconds of experience per run to try and figure it out. I tried his head, shoulders, jumping, jump and spin, curve jump, all of it. I finally gave in and looked up somebody else play it on YouTube. They were doing exactly what I was doing. I didn't understand. I scrolled down and read the comments. "You don't have to spin, just jump on his head," a comment wrote. I laughed, spiteful. Of course you could just jump on his head, but it's obviously not working. I started my next run, reaching phase 2. The comment echoed in my mind, taunting me. "Just jump on his head." "It's not working," I said to the phantom jumping forward. I connected with his head. I had done damage. Stunned, my mind raced. I did it again and again, ending the fight. I sat with myself, reflecting. Why did it work now? What had I been doing if not jumping on his head? What had I been doing? Unresolved, I carried forward. The lab has a lot of activation boxes, opening doors, and covering pits, mixed with a healthy dose of electricity and some TNT, of course. The level isn't that bad, and you can find rhythms if you look for them. The bonus level is weirdly early, though I'm not complaining. The star of the show is the scientist that you have to spin into 3 times, knocking him off a ledge. You fight a few humanoids in Crash, but this is the first instance where I thought, wow, I just murdered that guy, didn't I? I guess because he doesn't just disappear after the first hit, he gained enough permanence in my brain to be recognized. Murder or not, I dashed through the level, continuing the tradition of dying end in sight. I give it another go, clinching out the win. The next level, the Great Hall, shoves you right to the exit, my dream level. It has what looks like a gem path, but I don't have the stones for it, so it just ushers me out. Don't worry, I still died here. Taking on End Cortex, I find myself on a blimp, battling it out. The highlight was that I was actually able to jump on the dumb idiot's head, even if it didn't hurt him. The hitboxes on his flying orbs were completely rigged, and I often died without one even touching me. After swinging the green plasma back at him a few times, he took the L, falling perhaps to his doom. saved, Tawna cuddles her short king close, and the two ride off on a blimp into the sunset. Watching as the credits go, I felt better than I thought I would. It was a relief to be finished, but there was a fondness in the back break. Though of course there was one level left. Stormy Ascent, a previously cut level turned DLC for the remake, awaits. It shares the same DNA as Slippery Slope. This means I barely made it past the first 2 sets of stairs before busting my head for the final time. Content to leave some paths untread, I closed out of the game with a score of 65%.
Game over.
Crash Bandicoot is focused on the gameplay, as a good platformer ought to be. Your main methods of traversing the environment are running, jumping, and spinning. Running moves you, jumping gets you vertical, spinning swats enemies away. Using this trinity of motion, you conquer. I've said it throughout, but the handling of Crash is just not right. You have to hold down the jump button to increase his height, but this leaves Crash feeling extra heavy. The horizontal controls are imprecise as mentioned, my input never exactly aligning with where I was placing the marsupial. Spinning doesn't always feel like it connects, which can lead to death, but this is likely a symptom of the control issue. The pronouncement of these issues change depending on the situation, ranging from perfectly manageable to borderline intolerable. They'll never be irrelevant though. Perception was also a big challenge in this game. There are certain camera angles where it's difficult to tell where something actually is in the space. The pillars and jaws of darkness are a notable offender, as are the Sawblade robots in Cortex Power Plant. This is a hard concept to remedy as a player. The perspective is locked, so I'm just forced to not trust my lying eyes. The goal of every level is to finish it, standard. There's extra win conditions for breaking every box dotting the level, as well as time trials. This nets a gem and a relic respectively. Both of these concepts have extensions. Breaking every box while not dying once on some levels earns a colored gem. Colored gems open up new areas and other levels for exploration, as we've seen. The extension of the relic is lesser, with the player earning more prestigious relics. There's also bonus levels nested within, typically giving boxes and lives. There are Cortex-themed bonus rooms, which grant a key unlocking a secret stage. These stages, full hog and fumbling in the dark, are harder rehashes of their normal counterparts. Cortex bonus rooms are on some of the hardest levels, though I never personally completed one. Thus, I was barred from the secret levels. I've always really liked these concepts. It gives the player a reason to go back to previous levels, either to find something new or to get a best time. It doesn't hinder the casual player, and I don't imagine it really inflates dev time. It seems like a no-brainer. Of course, the system will be tied to the quality of level design. The levels in this game tend to come in flavors. There's a lot of element sharing between them, mechanics, enemies, aesthetics. Up a Creek is similar to Upstream. Sunset Vista is a harder rehashing of the Lost City. Stormy Ascent is a somehow worse Slippery Climb. This is good and bad. A second appearance of a level type allows for it to be harder because the player is more familiar with what it will offer. The counter is the developers tend to indulge for this inflated difficulty. Despite element sharing, Crash does offer variety. Novelty levels like Boulders or Hog Wild break up the typical platforming in an interesting way. If you like these levels, they're fun flashes in the pan. If you don't, they won't come up as often. Still, for level types like the rope bridges of High Road, you wish they never came up at all. Some levels are overly designed, specifically near the end, to the point where it feels like perfection is the only way forward. Levels like Slippery Slope feel designed to be unforgiving, uncaring, and unrepentant. I don't know if the devs were trying to test the resolve of the player, or if they were throwing anything into the level they could think of. At some points, it just feels cruel. The placement of levels doesn't always make sense either. Crash uses a level select, dressed up as a linear path across 3 islands. On the 3rd island, for instance, the 4 levels before Cortex Castle are much harder than everything after, including the final boss fight. This is seen throughout all the islands. Hard levels are randomly sprinkled in rather than used to build tension before a boss fight. Sometimes it does align, like Sunset Vista being right before Koala Kong, but that seems like the exception. The boss fights in this game aren't overly complicated. Each fight has its own gimmick, and you'll burn through a few lives trying to figure out what you're supposed to be doing. Koala Kong was the easiest, if only because he isn't right up on you the way Papu Papu is. The fights often have a tight field of view, which itself adds difficulty. The funniest was Pinstripe Potoroo, a Scarface-style bash I wasn't expecting. The worst time was had with Embryo, but only because I'm convinced his hitbox in Phase 2 is broken. The final boss fight with Cortex is marred by his projectiles having larger hitboxes than they ought to, and how uneventful it feels. As an addendum, I'm not sure if the tips on the loading screen help you with the boss fights, because my game loaded so fast that I was never able to really read them. For the story, there is a story here, I'm sure. It's all vague to keep it focused on the platforming, which I can't complain about. Crash is held captive by Doctors N, Cortex, and Embryo, who are creating anthropomorphic animals, no doubt to do their bidding. Crash escapes when the machine overloads. He had to leave his girlfriend behind though, and goes back for her. With the exception of Papu Papu, which again just feels like a home invasion, the bosses are other animal experiments created by the scientist team. Fending them off, Crash reclimbs the castle and sets it on fire. We're not really shown him damaging anything, but the final fight with Cortex, it's completely inflamed. We beat Cortex, get our GF, and ride away. There's not much here, nothing worth discussing, but it's more than Sonic had. The aesthetics of this game really tie the elements together. It's charming and cartoony while still having a good amount of detail. The jungle feels lush, the paths through them clearly marked for the player, but not in a way that feels in conflict with the harmony of the landscape. While there's often a slimmer area the player can tread, the whole environment feels filled in a living way. Plants and moss grow around stones, totems are painted with colorful patterns, the industrial levels lean into neon greens and steely grays and blues. Each level type has its own design it pulls from, creating a memorable harmony. This version is of course a remake, so it relies a lot on the design language that was available from Inception. But it's obvious when doing a side-by-side that the remake reinterprets and expands with respect. This creates a cohesive thread throughout the game. I have issues with the difficulty scaling, but I never felt any area was of lower quality or that a level didn't belong. The boxes look great here too. These boxes really scratch a deep part of my brain. As a kid, I especially loved the bouncing ones. They always felt like a treat. Jumping on a checkpoint, I found myself examining the pieces of the crate on the ground. The detail that went into it. I really do appreciate the attention. The color gems don't look as nice in the remake, perhaps due to less saturation, but that's something I had to drum up in my mind as a counter, so not a big deal. The Crash and Coco models look fine, though I do prefer the originals. It can have been easy to modernize Crash without getting weird with it. His proportions are strange, so for what they were working with, I'm happy. Coco looks better than Crash, but again, she has more normal proportions, like a semblance of a neck. I think an Easter egg where you could swap out the modern graphical model for the lower poly model would have been really cool, but c'est la vie. The sound design is pretty peak. I'm biased here, but the sounds are pretty much as I remember them. I'm sure they were remade, but it's very close to the originals. Hearing the TNT countdown for the first time brought back a million memories. Though, as a counter, I'm not loving Crash's voice. I did look this up, Crash does speak sometimes, and it still weirds me out. I'm okay with woes, but full words, no thanks. Funny enough, Steve Bloom was the voice actor for Crash at one point. See you, Space Crash Boy. For the music, it's classic, and the main theme is iconic. It's bouncy, fun, cool, all the things Crash should be. Jungle Rollers brings a rhythmic beat complete with a squawking bird and a didgeridoo for that Australian realness. It would go hard in a rainforest cafe. Hog Wild has a chaotic and fast-paced theme with random slapstick sound effects sampled before turning into an almost surf rock segment. Heavy machinery is snappy and electronic, and it feels like what the 90s imagined living inside of a computer would sound like. Generator Room is ominous, mysterious, and it feels like hiding from a xenomorph. All of the tracks are incredibly solid. I would say the only miss is Pinstripe Potoroo. It doesn't stand out or really align with the gameplay in my opinion. Overall, I would rate the remake of the first Crash Bandicoot a 5 out of 10. Keep in mind this is divested from the rest of the trilogy. The game is fun but punishing, and the punishing segments outweigh the fun. It's aesthetically and musically golden, but Crash's poor handling can't be ignored. the level difficulty curve is inconsistent, and the life mechanic is an archaic holdover. I have a self-admitted bias to Crash Bandicoot, but again, all of my experience was with Warped. This game doesn't have as much as I recall the third entry having, like different movement abilities, so I'm hoping my bias evened out. Peeping the Xbox achievement data, 67% of players got the Spin Doctor achievement, which comes from spinning an enemy into another twice in a single level. This can be done on the very first level without any work, making it a good benchmark for playership. It should be noted achievements are game-specific, so these are only specific to the game we're examining. 37% of players beat Papu Papu, the boss of the first island. 9% of gamers beat Koala Kong, the boss after Sunset Vista. Just under 5% of players actually beat Cortex and finished the game. In fact, more players took a hidden gem path than beat the game, which is surprising. This lends to the difficulty of the game. Under half fall off before the first boss, not great, but understandable for a collection. Or so I thought until I looked at the data for the other games. Crash 3, Warped, has an equivalent win rate, and Crash 2 has one in the 3% range. Clearly, these games are hard and people aren't making it to the end. But worse, the early achievements of Crash 1 have much higher percentages than the early achievements of the sequel. Meaning, Crash 1 is the most popular of the three. Crashen Ring is a gauntlet of skill and sometimes exploitation as seen on the rope bridge levels. Though, the greatest skill it tests is patience. Do you have the patience to run and then wait for a platform, run again, forced to rebuild your rhythm? Do you have the patience to die end in sight, forced back to the beginning due to game over? Do you have the patience to memorize? Do you have the patience to survive? I don't regret picking this up, though I wish it was more in line with how I remembered it. That is, with enjoyment being the main driver rather than skill. Either way, while I wouldn't recommend this to a casual player, anyone who likes platforming or challenging gameplay, I totally would. If you leave the kids game concepts at the door, Crash is a demanding and worthwhile foe. I just couldn't put my memories down. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.
This way, Tarnished. May I have a word?